Hi my friends. Back to the same position we had last time, but today to talk about something slightly different. Last time we talked about rook endgame principles and mainly about the activity in the endgame, especially rook's and king's activity, and how the rook's activity is what perhaps he thought was the most important element in the endgame. But we need to talk about something else, how to think on the endgame and how to think about chess in general. These comments I'm going to give are based mostly on the chess trainer Gribas, something that I really admire. I am currently working again on his book, Your Jungle Guide to the Rook Endings. A fantastic book, I recommend it to everyone. And there is one part of the book where he talks about how to think in chess, especially in the endgame, but not restricted only to it. And he talks about the plan in chess. How do we make a plan in chess? When we talk about plan, we have to take we of course talk about how we plan to proceed in our coming moves, and in order to set a plan of action about how to continue in our next moves, we need to have clear that we also have two more steps. Step number one is the evaluation of the position, and in this part we have to analyze what is happening over the chessboard and pay attention to the most important elements tactically and strategically. So for example, in this position, for both sides, I could say that some strategic important elements are that my king as white and king and rook are more active. Okay, so I would say that those are important strategic elements. For black, we could argue that he has a passed pawn and that his rook is pushing that pawn from behind. So that is the number one part. What are the strategic ideas? Tactical ideas. I could argue that for white is to try to come with the king, pretty evident once you saw this example in the last class, and try to give checkmate. And for black, well, I could argue that if my king goes forward, one possible threat or tactical idea is just to push the pawn and try to get a new queen. Okay, so we know that those elements are in the position. And let's say we saw the position, we saw those elements, and we try to figure out if going with our king forward and trying to checkmate the black king works. And once you start analyzing and see, well, king e5, if black plays f4, I play king e6, threatening to win the rook with rook a8 check. And no matter what he does, let's say he plays rook a8 check to escape the threat, I play king d6, and we can see here that he is either going to get checkmated or lose his rook. I used to show what's happening here. Well, the threat is king e6. Let's say you give check, well, I come here, and now I think it's clear. Either I give you checkmate or I take the rook. Now, we are analyzing all this in our heads, okay? We're analyzing all this in our heads, and we are move after move trying to consider what is the other guy going to do. It's not like me just playing king e5 and he doing the best move he can make. It's what will be his best resource. What will be his best resource? And even against what are his best ideas, push the pawn or rook a8, I am winning the game. Okay, so that is, I could say, well, once we consider that, that is the next part, making our move. Okay, the execution. So first, to be clear, we have to evaluate the position, make an evaluation, considering the strategical and tactical ideas in the position. Then we set up our plan. In this case for white is to push the king forward, to create threats over the black king, and then is the execution. We have to calculate the moves and make sure that we make the right moves over the board. That is the way to think. Not only in the endgame, here is a really simple case where we can do that, but in most positions that is what we have to do. With some of my students, I've been talking in the last classes about the strategic decision making, and based mostly on agar ideas, we reduce that to some simple concepts when we talk about planning. And in the evaluation part, We use 5 questions. What is the material over the board? Usually when you play a game, you are not considering that question that much because you are more or less clear about what is the material situation. Next is what is the king's position. How is the king's position? We can exploit it or we cannot. Funny enough, even if this is an endgame, we can do it. Bringing our king to e6 and d6. Weak squares and weak pawns. Here, definitely there are no like weak squares or weak pawns that we could use in example, but it's something that we have to consider in most middle game positions. Worst piece is also something that we usually consider in more complex positions. What are the best and worst pieces from each side? And always, those questions we don't have to always use, but we should all the time, every single move, every time we play, ask ourselves, if we have a move that we can play or a plan that we can execute, what is the other guy going to do against this plan? And maybe something I did not mention before in this video, but we always have to consider what the other guy wants to do. That is really important. Like here, what does black wants to do? Well, if I move my king, probably pushing the pawn forward. If it's black to move here, maybe play something like king a8 and rook f7 would be a great idea now to be able to get our king out of the last rank. Just an example of things that we could do, but sometimes we do that work, or we consider what the other guy wants to do, and then we do all our fantastic and terrific plan, and we start execution and make our moves, and we realize, oh yeah, I planned on making this move, but I did not think about what he was going to do if I made that move. Every time we make a move, the position will have something that changes, maybe small, maybe big, but something in the position will change. So before we make that move, once we make the decision, we should always have that awareness of thinking, okay, if I play this, what is he going to do now? How is he going to counter my idea? Or is something changing in a way that he will be now able to do or achieve something? That should be always in our heads. Also remember, not all the plans have to be super complicated. Some are pretty simple, like this one. Even in middle game positions, it's really hard in chess to find a super long plan that goes move after move after move. Usually the position changes, and what we want is to have the little plans that will help us to improve bit by bit our position. Sometimes things are more dramatic, especially in tactical positions, and we won't have that many chances of thinking this way. We'll have to then be focused on tactics. But in positions where we can actually plan and make calm decisions based mostly on long-term thinking, we want to do that. We want to little by little improve our position, not making plans that are going to be 10 moves long, but that will clearly improve the situation that we have over the board. Let me see what else. I think that is the most important thing. Well, last but not least, Grivas gave a really important piece of advice, and is that if we make a plan, we should stick with it. We should not try to change our plans every single move, unless, because sometimes we will have to do it, but unless we have really good reasons to do it. To doubt ourselves when we make a plan and to question it is natural, but to change it every single time is not. Even if it's not the best plan, it's better not a great plan, but a plan or an idea that we want to execute than changing plans every time we move, okay? So always consider that. It's okay to change our plan, but we have really good reasons to do it. For example, my plan is to, in this case, push forward the king to try to give checkmate, but when I analyze, I realize he's getting a queen, then probably I should not go for that, right? I should go and try to trade the pawn, take the pawn on f5 with my rook, and go. If it's a draw, it's a draw. But if I am okay with going with my king. I consider I have enough activity, even if it's not that clear, but since like, okay, this position has to be really good for me because my king is really active, my rook is creating all these threats, but I cannot see clearly what is best if going with the king forward or trying to trade the pawn, but I cannot see that my plan is bad on itself. I should stick with the plan I had, because if not, I am going to lose every single game on time. I'm going to second guess myself all the time. I'm going to change plans in my games every time I am doubtful of it myself, and that is not a good habit. Okay, and I guess that is all about this video. It's about EPA, Evaluation Plan Execution, where we should then evaluate the position, create a plan, where we consider our ideas and the other guy's ideas, and the execution. What should I move based on those two first elements, the evaluation and the plan I create, and make sure that I get the best execution with my calculation and the moves that I am going to make over the board. We should always think about the merits and disadvantages of our positions. We should always consider the other guy's ideas. We should determine the targets of the position. We should always consider how the other guy is going to react to our moves and plans. And we should always stick with our plan unless we find a terrible flaw in it or something that is just clearly better. But for the most part, we should try to stick with our plan, okay? Okay, that's all for now. I hope this is really useful for you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.